I've learned from living in the Appalachian Mountains my entire life that if you feel like something is watching you, more than likely there is. And with that being said, we're going to jump right into tonight's story. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachia story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Chelsea. The stories I'm about to tell you happened about 8 years ago, but it took place over the span of 2 years. When I turned 18, my best friend and I moved in together. We both felt like we were ready to start our adult lives, so we were looking for a few months for a place to rent. We finally found a house, so my best friend Caitlin went to look at it while I was at work. I told her to take pictures so I could see it when she left. After I got off work, she called me and she was so excited because of how much she loved this house. She sent me the pictures she took, and honestly, I couldn't believe the house was in our price range. It was newly renovated and had a lot of space. We both were really excited, so she texted the owner and told them we would take it, and about a month later we started to move our things in. Walking into the house for the first time, I felt uneasy, but just wrote it off as a new environment that I would have to get used to. Being that we were only 18 at the time, we really didn't have that much to unpack, and once we got most of everything put away, we ordered some pizza and sat in the living room eating and enjoying being in our new space. We lost track of time and ended up staying up until 2 a.m. just talking, so we said goodnight and both went to our rooms to get ready for bed. I was laying in bed scrolling on my phone trying to get tired to fall asleep when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I figured it was just Caitlin because the bathroom was outside of my bedroom, but then I got a text. Caitlin messaged me and said, "While you're up, can you grab me a water from the fridge?" My heart sank immediately. I called her phone, and when she answered, I asked if she was walking in the hallway going to the bathroom. She said no, she heard footsteps and thought I was up and wanted to see if I would grab her a water. I told her that definitely wasn't me because I'm laying in bed right now. We both got a little spooked, so Caitlin came to my room to sleep with me that night. We did check the house and there was no one there, so we just figured it was the house settling. A few months go by with no incident. Caitlin had to go out of town with her parents for the weekend, so I was at the house all by myself. But things had been going good, so I really wasn't worried. The first night by myself, everything was great. I enjoyed being alone and was able to get some things done around the house, but the second night was completely different. That day I was out of the house at work and stopped by to see my parents after work, so I got home around 10 p.m. As soon as I walked in, I got really paranoid that someone was in there with me, watching me. I turned on every light in the house and it made me feel a little better. I took a shower and went to lay down, but the feeling of someone watching me came back. I turned the TV on to try to get my mind off of it, but the feeling would not go away. I had windows in my room above my bed, but the windows are not full length. They were maybe 2 feet tall and went across the top of my wall above my bed. I didn't have curtains on the windows because no one would be able to see into my room if you were standing out there, and I really loved when the moonlight would shine into my bedroom. As I'm laying there watching TV with the feeling like I'm being watched now more than ever, I stood up on my bed and peeked out of the window, but I couldn't see anything. I sat back down telling myself I'm just being paranoid. Right before I went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back in my room, I shut and locked my bedroom door just for extra precaution since I was by myself. Eventually I fall asleep, and in the morning, I opened my eyes staring directly at my bedroom door and was in complete horror. My bedroom door was unlocked and cracked open. I have never been dressed and in my car so fast. I went to my parents' house and told them what happened. My mom said I probably woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, but I didn't remember. I have never been one to not remember doing something. If I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, which is rare, I always remember it. I ended up staying with my parents until Caitlin came back. When she came back, I told her what happened, and what she told me still sends shivers down my spine. She said that a few weeks ago she had shut her door, but when she woke up, her door was completely open. And then the next night, she shut and locked it, and when she woke up, it was completely open. She said that she thought I had come into her room in the middle of the night, but again, I rarely wake up in the middle of the night, and even if I did, I wouldn't go to her room. With this happening to both of us, we decided to do a few experiments. For the next week, we would both shut and lock our doors at night, and in the morning we would see if they were open. And of course, when we woke up, both of our doors would be open. Hers would always be fully open, but mine would only be cracked. Since this had been going on for a little bit, we honestly got to the point where we ignored it. If the worst thing that happened was our doors opening in the middle of the night, it really wasn't a big deal to us. At least that was my thought until a few months later. I had just gotten off work, but Caitlin was still at work. I went home, and again, as soon as I stepped in the house, I started feeling like I was being watched. But this time, it really freaked me out, given all the other weird things that have happened. I decided to take a shower and wait until Caitlin got home. When I got out of the shower, I was drying off when I heard the front door close. I yelled out, "Hey, I'm in the bathroom. I'll be out there in a minute." I got dressed, opened the bathroom door, but I didn't see Caitlin. I walked through the whole house and nobody was there. I looked outside and her car wasn't there either. I called her and she said she was running a little late but would be home soon. I told her that I thought she was already home because I heard the front door close and she said she hadn't been home since that morning. At this point, I didn't know if I was making it up in my head or if the front door actually did close. I went back to my bed and just sat there on my phone waiting for her to get home. As I'm sitting there, I still have this intense feeling of being watched. When you're in my room on my bed, you can look directly out of my bedroom door through the hallway into the bathroom. The doors weren't perfectly lined up, but you could see half of the bathroom while sitting on my bed. I glance up from my phone and my eyes met the door frame of the bathroom, and what I saw gives me nightmares to this day. I see half a silhouette of a man with a bent neck and his full face. My eyes locked directly on his. His eyes were wide but had a yellowish-white glow to them, not very bright, but enough to know it wasn't normal. The pure evil that I felt in that moment still haunts me. I was frozen in fear and couldn't move. That's when my bedroom door slammed shut. I was still sitting on my bed, and there was absolutely nothing that could explain what I saw in the bathroom and how my door slammed shut. I practically flew to my bedroom door, locked it, and pushed my dresser in front of it. I called Caitlin hysterically crying, telling her about what I saw, but as I was describing what I saw, I could tell she became uncomfortable. Her tone shifted from her normal bubbly personality to cold and protective. She told me to stay there and that she was coming. She got there in about 10 minutes, but to me, sitting in that room by myself with whatever that was in my bathroom felt like an eternity. I heard the door open and Caitlin's voice calling out to me. I opened my bedroom door and she came in, hugging me. I sat on the floor with her crying for a good 5 minutes before I could even talk about what happened. Once I could actually string together a sentence, she hugged me tighter and said, "It's okay. You don't have to tell me. I know what you saw, because I saw him too." She helped me grab a few things and we went to stay at my parents' house. While we were there, I asked her why she didn't tell me about seeing him, and she told me that she didn't want to scare me and that she hadn't seen him since, so she thought maybe it was a dream. There is no way that what she and I saw being the exact same thing was a dream. We stayed at my parents' house for a few days and then went back to our house. We both ended up sleeping in Caitlin's room for the next year. Things honestly were going great, and we hadn't heard or seen anything strange in a long time at that point. That was until one night Caitlin and I were laying in her bed watching TV before we went to sleep. We heard footsteps on the other end of the house in the hallway. We both looked at each other like, oh great, here we go again. We then hear what sounds like nails on glass scratching at our window. We both turn and look at her window and see the same bent-necked man with yellow-white glowing eyes staring at us. We both scream and I jump up and turn the bedroom light on. We both packed a bag as fast as we could and went and stayed with my parents, too terrified to even return back to that house. At this time, we only had a few months left of our lease, and my parents let us stay with them until we found a new place. The next place we rented was a breath of fresh air. We always felt safe there, and we stayed there for a few years. About a year ago, I was driving by that house, and it was demolished. They are almost done building an apartment building there, and all I can say is I pray that the thing that would watch us doesn't show up again. I will never forget that house and the terrifying encounters that we had, and I always check my surroundings now just to make sure there's nothing lurking and watching from the shadows. So as you know by now, last night I was going to post this episode of Tea After Midnight, but when I went to edit the video that I recorded last night, the audio was all jacked up. I'm not diving too far into it, I just know that it was super creepy. When I was trying to play it back, it was super glitchy, it would come in and out. But regardless, this story freaked me out not only last night, but tonight as well. I don't know if you can tell back here, but I hung up a piece of fabric underneath my sheer curtains because this story talking about something watching them and feeling like they were being watched made me super paranoid, so I hung a piece of fabric up. Not only going through the experience yourself, but your best friend also having the same exact experiences you had. I had chills all over my body when I read Bent Neck Man with yellowish white glowing eyes. Absolutely not. Y'all are better than me, because if I would have saw that, out immediately. I don't care, I'll break my lease, that's that. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, you can email me at the email in the caption or the email that's on the screen right here. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I love you, I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
I will never understand people who don't believe in the paranormal. It doesn't make any sense to me. I know part of it is just because I've had so many experiences since I was a little kid that it's just like my norm. But it also just seems so bleak and sad to not believe in the paranormal or a spirit world or anything. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I started seeing this shadowy man standing outside my bedroom window every night. And it freaked me out for the first several months that I would see him, and then I eventually got used to him. One night, I opened the window and I let him in. I just had this feeling that that was what I was supposed to do. After that night, he would just stand in the corner and watch me while I slept. And I would tell my mom about it, and I think that was one of the reasons that I was put on anxiety medication, which I'm still on. I do have anxiety, but I don't think that was part of it. When I was 13, I was on my way to a soccer tournament in my mom's car, and we were in the left lane, there was a pickup truck in the middle lane, and an 18-wheeler in the right lane, and we all came up to a red light. Out of nowhere, this car speeds up from behind us and tries to squeeze between my mom's car and the pickup truck. I still remember so clearly. In slow motion, I saw red plastic exploding everywhere, and looking up and seeing this woman fly through the air after she was ejected from her car, and seeing the look of terror on her face before she hit the ground. Mom told me to go wait in the grass while she spoke to the other drivers and the police when they eventually showed up. And I remember kneeling in the grass in my little soccer uniform and seeing that woman that I had seen fly through the air walking between the cars and looking really confused and lost. No one was looking at her or talking to her, and she wasn't trying to get anyone's attention. And I remember thinking, thank God she's okay. Thank God she survived that crash. She didn't. She didn't survive the crash. Those are only 2 experiences. I have had so many paranormal experiences throughout my life that it just doesn't make sense to me that people don't believe in it. When I was in active addiction, I overdosed twice within a month of each other in the same McDonald's parking spot, and both times I remember like coming to, I guess, and being in this really dark space with these very tall, shadowy figures standing around me. And even though that sounds scary, I remember feeling so comforted and at peace and finally safe. And the second time it happened, I remember I was there for longer than I had been the first time. And one of those figures stepped up to me and put what I can only imagine was its hand on my chest. And I remember feeling like I was pushed and slammed back into my body. I came to gasping for breath, and the EMTs told me that I almost did not come back and that they had had to Narcan me 5 times. I truly believe that if that shadowy person or figure or whatever had not pushed me back into my body when it had, I would not be here today. And it's crazy to me that people think all of that is just in my head. That just seems like such a sad, bleak existence to not believe that there's anything more than us out there or after this life. So if you don't believe in the paranormal or a spirit world, I'm not going to argue with you. I completely respect it, but that does sound really sad, and I'm sorry. Because in a lot of ways, the spirit world gives me a lot of comfort. You guys stay safe. I love you.
Named Lena said that she worked at a roadside motel in 2017, and this man came in who gave her the ultimate creeps, and she witnessed his eyes going from brown to neon glowing blue. The story builds on the last one that I shared about the adult dancer who was working at a club in 2015 and who I think encountered the same man. Can't be sure, of course. However, it's the same general area, New Mexico, and there's a lot of similarities in this story, so you listen and you tell me what you think. It says she was working at this small independently owned motel. It was roadside, it was in a small town, it was off the highway. So most of the people that they saw, they never saw again. It was truckers, it was families passing through. The motel was mostly quiet because there was another bigger motel chain just down the road, and most people preferred to stay there. So most of her job just dealt with checking in guests, the occasional AC complaint, things like that. Like the job, even though she worked nights, it was pretty uneventful. There wasn't a whole lot that gave her the creeps. Night she's working, she said it was about 9:45 p.m. This man walks in. He's early 40s. He has short, cropped, dark brown hair. She said that he looked well dressed, actually too well dressed to be staying in that motel. She said it looked like he belonged somewhere nicer. He pays for a full week in cash, and this was uncommon because they required a credit card for incidentals and things like that. And she tells him this, and he says, I don't have a credit card on me. I actually was robbed recently. I lost my wallet. I'm just looking for a place to stay. I can give you more cash to hold on to if you let me stay in the room. And so her manager's not there. She calls her manager. And again, her manager is also the owner operator of this motel. She asks if it's okay. She's like, how does he look? And Lena's like, he looks well dressed. He looks clean. And the manager's just like, that's fine. Just take the money, take an extra $500 for incidental. Lena said it was uncommon, but the motel was hurting. Tells him it's fine. He says, I don't even need room service. Thank you so much. Your kindness will not be forgotten. And that kind of gave her the creeps because she's like, who talks like that? Goes, yeah, it's fine, no problem. I'm going to put you in room 12. It's right down this hallway. And he says, are there other people checked into the rooms next to mine? And she says, oh, I don't know. He says, never mind, it's fine. Thank you so much. And he smiles at her. And the way that he smiled at her gave her the ultimate creeps. That I don't even know why, because he was polite, he was calm, and I noticed when he said thank you, he locked eyes with me, he had brown eyes. He hands him the key. He holds her gaze for a second too long while taking it. Walks to his room. Lena's off for the next 2 days, so she kind of forgets about him. She comes in on the third day of his stay and has pretty much forgotten about him at this point. It's the night shift again. She's doing her normal job. Around 1:30 in the morning, she sees him come into the lobby with a woman. Man walked in first. The woman followed slightly behind him. It appeared that she may have been slightly intoxicated. Her head was slightly down. Her hair was sort of in her face, but the man was definitely leading. Neither the man nor this woman acknowledge her. They just walk straight past her toward his room, and she doesn't hear anything again for the rest of the night. Then in the morning, around 6 in the morning, the man comes to the desk and he asks for an extra key. She's not really paying attention, not looking at him, sort of preoccupied with something else she's doing. And she says, oh, we have to register additional guests. Do you have someone else staying in the room with you? And he says, no, I'm alone. Says, I just need the key for myself. I lost my other one. And she looks up at him and she notices it's the same man, but his eyes are glowing this bright neon blue. Shocked her because it wasn't just that his eyes had changed from brown to neon blue, because that could have been explained by context, but she said these were definitively glowing. She thought her eyes were playing tricks on her, so she blinks and she looks at him and his eyes were still glowing. She says she felt mesmerized. She said it felt like time slowed down. She said it felt like she heard this buzzing in her ear. She almost got hot, like she felt like she was going to pass out for a second. And she says, I'm sorry, no, your eyes are beautiful. I didn't notice them the other night when you checked in. And he says, oh yeah, I get that a lot. She goes, okay, well, here's your extra key. Just so you know, though, it is our policy. We do need to register additional guests. I don't need their name or anything. It's just, it doesn't cost anything extra. It's just our policy. And he says again, no, I'm here alone. He holds his hand out, takes the key, and again holds her gaze for just a little bit too long and then goes back to his room. She did not see the woman leave, but there's multiple exits to the motel, so she said she could have gone out a side door or something and didn't stick around past her shift to find out. She does not see the man the next night, but another guest who's staying in the room directly next to his room ends up coming to the desk around like midnight. And she says, hey, we keep hearing this noise coming from the room 12. It sounds like a low humming. Can you go check on it? And so she's like, yeah, I'll go check. So she goes to the room. She knocks on the door. And at first she had tried calling, but nobody answered. So she's knocking at the door. Nobody's coming. She's listening at the door and she does hear this low humming noise. That it did not sound mechanical. It sounded like a chorus of people humming the same low notes together. So she's like, what is going on in there? She's knocking. There's nobody coming to the door. She's thinking maybe this man's sleeping with a sound machine or something. Goes back to the front desk. The person from the next room over calls the front desk again. They're still complaining about it. She's like, yeah, we're trying to check it out. I can't get a hold of anyone in the room. I'm trying to get clearance to go inside. Whatever. She's trying to determine protocol. There is security who is alerted, and apparently they're going to the room or they're on the way to the room or something when this man walks in the lobby. This time there's another different woman behind him and she's walking the same way. He's in front, she's behind, she's got her head lowered, hair's in front of her face. At this point, Lena's thinking that he's using SWs or bringing different women home. Maybe he's having an affair. She doesn't really know. She's not paid enough to ask questions. But she stops him. She goes, hey, sir, there's been a noise complaints coming from your room. We actually have security on the way. People are complaining about a low humming noise coming. And he looks at her and he says, oh, I'm sorry, I must have left a radio on. But she notices more than what he says, more than his excuse. She notices that his eyes are brown again. And she definitively remembers the conversation that they had just had in which she told him his eyes were beautiful and she hadn't noticed them and how they were glowing this bright blue. Said I was truly so taken back that they had changed back to brown that I completely forgot about the noise complaint. And I just said, okay. I said, please keep it down just for the sake of the other guests. And he says, okay, thank you. And they go to the room. At this point, she's curious. She's like, I want to know what's going on in there. So she makes a note for housekeeping to go check on the room, even though he said he didn't need housekeeping. It was in their motel policy to have housekeeping check on the room every few days if they denied housekeeping. And so the next morning, housekeeping goes, they come back, they basically tell her that everything's normal in the room, that it's completely untouched, that the bed doesn't even look slept in, super clean, nothing to worry about. She feels unsettled by him, but she can't put her finger on why. And also, this man had paid upfront in cash for the full week, plus the extra $500 for incidentals. So there's nothing she can do besides put a note on his account for maybe the other people to kind of keep an eye on him. Nobody notices anything weird. I guess the end of his stay comes up. He checks out. She thinks she's never going to see this man again. It was just this weird, unsettling guess that she had, right? Something for the notebook. Well, a month later, this man comes back. It's on another night she's working. He checks in again. He's got brown eyes. She's professional. She's pretending she's never seen him again. She goes, oh, name, blah, blah, blah. He does the same thing. He goes, I would like to pay for a week in advance in cash. I got robbed. I lost my credit card. Maybe he doesn't remember her. Either way, she, knows the protocol now from her manager. She knows the same person. He didn't cause any problems last time. So she takes the money, allows him to check in. She says that night she got curious and she knows she's not supposed to do it, but she ended up going to outside of his room around 2 o'clock in the morning. She's standing outside and she's listening to see if she hears that humming again because she's trying to figure out what it was. And she does hear it coming from inside the room. And she said it wasn't like moaning. It wasn't human. It wasn't just one person. It was like something deeper. And as she's standing outside the room, the doorknob turns and he opens the door. His eyes are glowing bright blue again. And he says, can I help you with something? She was kind of caught in the act. She said that she was just standing there with this shocked look on her face, and there was no sound when he opened the door. There was nobody else in the room that she could see. She said with the speed in which he opened the door, he must have been standing just on the other side of it and been like watching through the peephole for her to come up and stand out there. And his eyes are glowing blue again. So she said, I had to make something up on the spot because I was caught red-handed. So I just told him that there was another noise complaint that we heard humming, that other guests had complained about it. He says, who complained about it because there's no one staying in the room next to me. Said it was almost like he was accusing her of something, like he knew she was lying. And then he smiled the same creepy smile that gave her the creeps the first time, and he said, if there's no problem here, I'd like to go back to bed. The next morning, before she even finishes her shift, so it's early again, he comes down to the front desk. He says that he's going to be checking out early, and he requests for the remainder of his deposit back. He says something like, oh, change of plans. It's not really our policy to refund the money. He says, well, I didn't finish the rest of the stay. I'd like the remainder of my money, please. And she says, well, I'll have to get clearance. He says, you know what? Forget about it. Doesn't even put up a fight, leaves without getting any of his money back. His eyes were glowing blue as he left. Notices he doesn't even have any bags with him. As he's walking out the motel exit, she said he turned back and looked at her and said, thanks for all your help, and smiled again. She says she has absolutely no idea who this man was. She never saw him again, but still to this day can picture what he looked like and the way that his eyes glowed. So do you think this was the same man as the last story? What do you think his deal was? Let me know your thoughts.
I got an email from a girl who said that there was a demon in our house that was terrorizing her by mocking her faith and mimicking her mother. This is one of the scariest stories I've heard in a very long time. What is that? Oh, well. So a little bit of background. She was about 13 years old at the time, turning 14 years old, and she lived in a small apartment. It was just her and her mom. Now, Abby's always believed in the paranormal, despite her family being very Christian and religious growing up. But her and her cousin used to live at her grandmother's house, and a lot of weird stuff used to happen at their grandmother's house. Like, they would hear the floors creaking at night. Nothing really too serious until she started noticing some things that were getting a little bit annoying. Like, she would have something in one place and then it would just end up in another place, and she would be looking for it for a while in the interim. So one day she's at her grandmother's house, right? And her entire family goes to the corner store. So it's just her in the house. Our grandmother lives in a rather small area, and it's important to note that her grandmother's house is 2 stories. Well, 8 or 9 o'clock rolls around and she decides that she's going to go in her room. She's going to turn off all the lights and she's going to watch some cartoons. When suddenly she hears something coming from downstairs in the kitchen, and it sounds like this rattling noise, like somebody is like fidgeting with the door handle. Well, she thinks that it's just her mom at this point, but then it continues and the door never opens. So she decides that she's just going to brush this off. She's chilling for about 5 more minutes at this point when suddenly she hears bum, 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 go up her stairs. Someone is dashing up her stairs. She said that these footsteps sounded deliberate, like they were moving with intention to do something. Now, little her is petrified at this point, but suddenly her family walks in the door, so everything's okay again. She's still scared, but her family is now there. Fast forward to when she's 13 years old. Now, her family is very religious, like I said before. They're Christian, but she does not believe in Christianity. She still doesn't to this day, and she did not back then. And I think that's a very important detail in this story. Now, despite her not being religious, she still had 3 Bibles in her room. She also had a cross above her door, and it was nailed to the door. So one night, she's just chilling in her room. She's in her bed and she's on her phone and she's talking to one of her male friends before she goes to sleep. Now, after she gets off the phone with this person, she falls asleep. She falls asleep very early, around 7 a.m. She wakes up out of nowhere around 2 a.m. She is wide awake and she feels very uneasy and she's cold for some reason. She checks her phone, it's dead, and then she looks over at the window. Her window is wide open, but she never opened that window. And she said that she never kept her window open at night. Actually, never at all. So she gets up to close it, and as she's closing it, she looks back at the clock, and the clock says 2 a.m. This is when she realizes that, I guess. And for some reason, this really scared her that it was 2 a.m. So she starts to feel very uneasy, and then she starts to feel dirty and like sweaty. So she decides that she's going to get into the shower. She gets into the shower, and she's just kind of washing herself up when she remembers hearing this sound. Now, this sound was a very weird noise. It was this whisper, and it sounded like it was whispering Bible verses. She said it sounded like a prayer. It was very hushed. And then she hears this thunk. And she's like, what was that? It sounded like something fell, and it sounded like it came from her room. So she kind of freezes for a second. And after a second, she decides that she's going to get out of the shower. So she gets out of the shower, and she finishes up in the bathroom. And that's when she looks over at her door, the same door that the cross was on. The cross that was nailed to her door is on the floor. This obviously really scares her. So she runs to her mom's room, only to realize that her mother is at work. And this is when it hits her. She's alone in her house by herself, and something is messing with her. She, out of pure just desperation, tries to gaslight herself a little bit. And she's like, this is just my imagination. I'm imagining this. That's it. That's all this is. She decides that she's going to take the cross, put it on her nightstand, and she's going to go lay in her bed, and she's going to watch some videos. She's just watching the videos when suddenly she hears this. She looks up, and where her TV is, there's a very thin wall that connects to the living room. That's when she sees it. Something is walking across her living room, dragging their nails against the wall. She pauses the video. She just sits there. She's frozen in fear. And she looks over at her cats, and all of her cats are just staring at the wall, also frozen. She said that eventually the noises did stop, and she was eventually able to fall asleep. Again, I'll never get over it. How? She falls asleep. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, she wakes up again. She feels like something is watching her. And then she tries to move and realizes she can't move. And then she hears it. Abby. Here's what's terrifying. She wasn't having sleep paralysis. It was in her mom's voice, and the voice was behind her. And she realized that when she tried to look, she could move her head. And she looks back behind her. Something is peeking at her from the hallway into her room, looking at her. It's extremely tall, and its head is tilted like this. And its hands are just sliding up and down the wall as it's saying, Abby. Here's the thing though. Let's pretend her real name is Abigail, right? Only her mother calls her Abby. So this thing was calling her by the nickname that only her mother has given her. She said that at this point, she was so scared that all she could think to do is pray, because her mother would tell her how God protects her and that you pray when something like this happens. So she started to pray, but she said that it felt hollow because she didn't believe. So she felt like it was not working. This thing did slowly slip past the door frame and out of sight. Throughout this whole entire night, she is super paranoid and scared. She keeps hearing things rattle. She keeps hearing that scratching noise that she heard before by the TV. So at this point, she's like, I cannot go back to sleep. So she stays up that entire night until her mom gets back home. When her mom gets back home, she tells her everything. And her mom is like, okay, we're going to church. I'm taking you to church. So they go to church the next day. Her mom also prayed for her intensely. The scary thing is that every time someone prayed for her, it would hurt her. Her chest would tighten up, and she would feel incredibly uncomfortable, and she was in pain. She said from there on out, she would constantly hear that prayer, like that hushed prayer outside of her bathroom door. She would constantly hear her nickname being called that her mother had given her. Things falling off of shelves, like things constantly happening, like something wanted a reaction out of her. She always follows the rules, even though she's not in Appalachia. If you see it, no you didn't. If you hear it, no you didn't. If it calls your name, you do not respond. So what do you guys think about that story? That story is one of the scariest stories I have told in a very long time. I meant that when I said that. So I believe that this was something very dark. I think that this was definitely demonic. That is my opinion. Whatever this was playing on the fact that she did not believe in God. And I think that is utterly terrifying. And it was ripping, the fact that it was able to rip a cross off of a wall, the fact that it was able to pray is scary. Like, use the words of God to scare her. That's terrifying. I wonder if it was slowly trying to possess her. Like, that's what it kind of sounds like to me. And I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Please tell me your thoughts on this. I would love to know what you think this was, how you think it was able to do all of these things. I always find it very interesting when evil things like this are able to mock, like, God, essentially. The part where it was moving its hands up and down her door and calling her by her mother's nickname, just, oh my God, that type of shit scares me. Like, sorry for swearing. That is the type of stuff that will make me have I will have trouble sleeping tonight. But drop all your thoughts, opinions, suggestions down below, and as always, please be respectful.
I was 11 years old and I didn't realize I was about to be taken until it was too late. I was on maybe a 10-minute walk, and my parents trusted me to go because this was the path that I always took, and it was something that I did often. Nothing ever felt off until this day, and it was literally the late afternoon. It wasn't even dark outside yet. I walked to the store, I grabbed a snack, and then I left to go walk back home. And that's when I noticed that a car was behind me driving very slowly. At first, I didn't think much of it. I just assumed they were slowing down to look for an address or a certain store or something. But then I noticed that they started to match my pace. If I started to walk faster, they started to drive faster. If I started to slow down, then the car would slow down. And so I got a little uneasy. I wound up crossing the street, and the car turned and they followed me. And that's when I knew for sure something was wrong. I tried to stay calm and pretend that I didn't even notice. The car wound up coming right beside me, and they rolled down the window, and it was a man, and he said, "Hey, can you help me find an address?" I didn't say anything. I just shook my head and I kept on walking. And then he said something that made my stomach drop. He said my name. I hadn't told anybody my name. I didn't recognize him. I've never seen him before. And then that's when I knew that this was not just an accidental thing. This was on purpose. So I started to walk even faster, and the car was again matching my pace. His window was still rolled down, and he was still trying to talk to me. He then began to start saying, "Hey, your parents told me to come pick you up, come get in my car." He said, "I'll take you back home." Obviously, I knew this wasn't true, so I did the only thing that I knew to do, and I started to run. Full speed, as fast as my legs could go. I cut through somebody's yard, and I went to the front door, and I started banging on their door, hoping somebody would answer. They did, and then that's when the car sped off. I finally made it home, and my parents called the police. They never found the car. They never found out who it was. The thing that bothers me the most is, how did he know my name? I genuinely think something followed me after I watched the movie The Ring. I know how that sounds, but just listen. So the night after I watched it, I went to bed and everything was normal. But I woke up at exactly 2:47 a.m. and it was to the feeling that something woke me up. And the whole room was dark except for one thing: my TV was on. And it wasn't super loud or anything, but it was just on the static screen, so I got up, I turned it off, and I went back to bed. The next morning I woke up and I realized that my bedroom door was open. I know that I close my bedroom door at night, every single night. It was just a one-time thing, so I brushed it off, whatever, tried to forget about it. However, this is when things started to get even worse. So the next night I went to bed, same thing, 2:47 a.m. rolled around, my TV was on yet again, and my bedroom door was open yet again, and I know that I closed it this time. So I just kind of stared at both the things for a minute, and then I got up and I went to go close my door, and the handle was warm. Like somebody had been holding it just before I did. The next night, I barely slept. I sat there just kind of waiting for things to happen, and right on cue, 2:47 a.m., my TV came on by itself, because I wasn't watching TV that night. Came on by itself, and this time it was not static right away, it was just kind of black, and then it switched to the static. And I don't know why, but I just kind of sat there watching it, like it kind of got me in a little bit of a trance. And that's when I heard something in my hallway, not footsteps, but something dragging slowly. So I grabbed my phone to turn on the flashlight, and I see that my phone's already on, and it's on the camera setting, which is really weird because I always lock my phone. And it had actually been recording something. However, it was just kind of facing on my bed, but the record button was going as I looked at it. I just stopped it. I didn't watch it. I got up, I closed my door, and I tried to go back to sleep. It wasn't a very good sleep, but I did my best. The next day was fine and normal, but the thing that I can't explain is at night my TV doesn't turn on anymore, my door's not open anymore, but I still wake up at 2:47 a.m. and there's been a couple times where I'm already sitting up facing the door, like I'm waiting for something. I truly believe that what you watch enters through your eyes, and we all need to be a little more careful what we allow into our spirit, because things do happen.
Have you ever had a prediction that came true? I was with my boyfriend at a party my brother was hosting when I was about 23. My brother introduced me to a friend and told me that he is gifted. I sat down with the guy and asked him what he saw in my future, romantically speaking. He said my current boyfriend was jealous of me and we wouldn't last as a couple. I asked if I would ever get married and have kids. He said yes, I would get married, but not have kids. The boyfriend and I only lasted another year before we broke up, and in retrospect, I can see he was jealous of me. I got married 3 years ago, and around that time, I learned I am infertile. Once when I was about 15, I had a crush on a guy, and he, oh so tragically, started dating another girl in class. I did a tarot reading about it, hoping to convince myself that their fling wouldn't last. The tarot cards very clearly pointed to marriage and a happy home life and stuff. 15 years later, those two people are happily married with kids. Someone responded to this post and said that the tarot cards predicted their future. And then OP responded, haha, yep, I very clearly remember being disappointed with the results of the reading because there was no way I could twist it around to mean anything other than marriage for those two people. I remember thinking, whatever, tarot is fake anyway. Well, now we know it's not. A friend and I went to a psychic when we were about 18, 19. The psychic told me my life would be uneventful, but I'd marry a much older man and I'd injure my left leg. Then she turned to my friend and said, you're going to marry a man named Blake or Blaine, and your mother wants you to know that she's proud of you. My friend's mother had recently passed, and my friend had just started seeing a guy named Blaine. 5 years later, she married Blaine, but never told him what the psychic said. I ended up tearing a large muscle in my left leg and have been dating a guy 10 years my senior. I would be so freaking pissed if a psychic told me that my life was going to be uneventful. Not me, but my mother, so take this with a grain of salt, as it is secondhand from someone who very much believes in supernatural type stuff of this sort. She had her palms read at a university-sponsored event, probably a residential life program near Halloween. My mother was 20 at the time, engaged to my father, but their tentative wedding date was after her 21st birthday. The palm reader told her that she would marry at age 20. The palm reader didn't know her current age. My mom says that in her head she sort of scoffed because, as I said before, her tentative wedding date was after she turned 21. However, it turned out that a few weeks later, their venue had to move the date because they had double booked it by mistake. The only weekend that worked for both families fell before my mom turned 21, so the palm reader turned out to be correct. My mom said there were a few other times that turned out to be valid, but I can't remember those specifically. I do remember one last thing, though, that stuck with me because of how potentially ominous it was. My mom says at one point the palm reader's face dropped into a frown or look of concern, and at that point the palm reader hesitated a bit in her spiel. My mom asked her what she saw, prompting the palm reader to continue, and the palm reader just shook her head and said, "There's nothing else that I can see right now." But my mom says she remembers thinking that the palm reader was withholding something. Well, my mother's second child, my older brother, passed away at age 3. And so in retelling the palm reading story, my mom wonders if the reader was able to see the tragedy, but didn't want to tell my mom about it. My young stepson's mother had just been attacked and unalived in front of him by his stepfather. When effectively orphaned, he came to live with us. To welcome him into our California home, we took him to our favorite restaurant, which was having a Renaissance feast themed dinner that night, including jugglers, musicians, costume servers, traveling magicians, and a tarot card reader. "Let's have our cards read," I suggested, and he eagerly agreed. Although his father became so upset at our silly superstitions, he actually left the restaurant. Ew. The old woman sat down at our table, and the horrifically traumatized 10-year-old boy solemnly drew his cards. The very first one turned over was the death card. The tarot reader, completely unknown to us and without any preamble, turned white and mumbled, "It can also mean new beginnings." My stepson and I just looked at each other with raised eyebrows and finished our dinner. Child later manifested a poltergeist in our suburban house and confessed that he and his mother had had a clairvoyant relationship, even in the immediate aftermath of her passing, when she came to him in an airless attic in the form of a rattling piece of cellophane seemingly blowing in non-existent wind. That was so sad, but I hope that whatever that boy was talking to was actually his mother.
You know, I still don't understand why can't some people just stay in their houses. Like, some people will see this and they go like, you know what's a good idea? Explore it. It all started with a guy who wanted to explore these abandoned sewers. I mean, they look abandoned. I'm not sure about that. They look abandoned to me. So the guy grabbed his camera because he wanted to film everything, and then he went inside. He was like, bro, what's the worst that could happen? Well, let me tell you that nothing could have prepared him for what's about to happen to him. As soon as he started walking inside and going deep into those tunnels, he heard a noise that sounded like a zombie. Not a single human being can do that noise. And instead of understanding that he's in danger, the guy decided to go like, what the hell? And decided to keep going. Yes, he walks a little bit further and then he saw this coming out of the dark, and whatever it was, this thing was screaming. If you're really focused, you can actually see it. That thing is tall. It's either that or the tunnels are really small. Anyway, when the guy saw this, he freaked out and started running for his life. He made it back outside and immediately started filming because filming is not a priority anymore. He is trying to survive.
What the hell? Hello? What the fuck was that?
Some people think that this video is fake. Other people are like, nah, this stuff can happen, so this video might be true. And I'm not gonna lie, they both have a point. This video might be fake because of the fact that that thing stopped chasing him as soon as the guy went outside. Why would the thing stop chasing you? There's also the fact that we can hardly see anything in the dark, so it's difficult to tell. The other people who believe this think that this might be some kind of, crazy person living in the tunnels. And the reason why he started running after the guy and screaming was because, this is kind of his home. He invaded his privacy. He was trespassing the guy who was filming. So this is why he got mad. But let me tell you that his voice was not human, so I don't know. And I'm sorry for not making a video for almost like 2 weeks. For those who don't know, my phone broke. It broke in front of me, so I couldn't make videos. I did not do that on purpose. And, we will come back better. But, I did not do that on purpose. So I'm sorry, but we are back.
Scary stories with evidence. Just in case you can't see them, they're little fishies. So this guy says that this is a picture that his friend sent him. So apparently the friend was hired to do some maintenance on some machines in this warehouse, and it got really late at night. Some of the people who worked in that warehouse ended up telling their friend, hey, we should leave because if you don't leave right now, we're gonna end up seeing that lady. So one of the guys who had gone with them took a picture. Later on, when they reviewed the photo, they saw something really foggy in the background. And they clearly remember that nobody was standing there when they took the picture. Nobody knew who the person in the picture was, and everybody just felt the tension of being there, almost like if somebody was watching them. So this is the picture that was taken, and again, nobody should be back there behind, the friend, the coworker. Definitely looks like a lady, kinda very foggy, but maybe something that should not be there. I would not want to go back there. What do you mean, let's go before the lady appears? What the fuck? Actually, that would be kind of fun, but if I was there alone, it wouldn't be fun. If my coworkers were there with me, okay, let's get a little spooky, but alone? No thank you. What do you guys think?
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Yes, yet again. Initial necklace, super cute. It's down here if you want it. I'm taking any proceeds that I make off of this necklace this month and donating it to the Miss Foundation. Because it's Women's History Month, bitch. Now into the story. While working on my master's degree, I worked in an old psychiatric hospital overnight on the inpatient unit for children and adolescents. I had to do a children and adolescents mental health rotation when I was in LPN school. And that was the saddest thing I have ever experienced. There was a 4-year-old there. Moving along. I had some kind of creepy things happen to me, and these are the scariest. The unit was split into 2 wings, one for children up to age 12 and another for adolescents aged 13 to 18. One of my main job duties was rounding, basically checking that everyone was in bed, asleep, and unharmed. There were some rooms that gave everyone the creeps. The room in the middle of the child hallway had a little girl who liked to talk as you got to the door of the room. I also saw her peek out a few times when I was walking down the hallway, only to be nowhere to be seen when you reached the room. What was most disturbing was that she appeared to be in a wet, torn dress, and her hair was wet as well. There was a lake nearby, so this always made me wonder if she had drowned in the lake and just kind of wandered her way to the hospital after death. That's the kind of shit that really fucks with your brain, She did appear to a few patients, but none seemed scared by her, more annoyed that she woke them up or wouldn't play. I got scared a few times when I went into that room because I felt someone touch my hand or tug the leg of my scrubs like they were trying to get my attention. It wasn't menacing, just very creepy and startled me pretty bad. Not to be funny at all, but I'm really glad that you as the professional were experiencing these as well as the patient. And that wasn't just written off as like a hallucination. You know what I mean? Then there was the room at the end of the adolescent wing. It is very windy outside, so if you heard that, I'm so sorry. It just felt bad or wrong. No one liked that room, and it seemed like it affected patients. Patients who were doing amazing would have setbacks after moving into that room. Sometimes I would get assigned as a one-on-one. This meant that I was within arm's reach of the patient at all times to prevent them from harming themselves. Most of the time on the third shift, that meant just sitting in the dark while they slept. I usually used it as a time to write papers, do homework, or just read. One night, I was on a one-to-one in that room. The patient wanted me to sit slightly further away because they felt creeped out that someone was watching them sleep, and I don't blame them. You can't blame them. That's definitely creepy. Obviously, we understand why you have to do it, but also, as you're sleeping, you know what I mean? Each room had a small bathroom. I was seated against the wall facing the bathroom, which had the light on but the door closed. As I was doing some charting on the computer, I saw a shadow pass under the bathroom door. I froze and stared at the door. It went across again. More than a little freaked out, I went to the door but heard nothing. Oh, you're brave. You're brave. I would have just stayed in the fucking chair. Matter of fact, I probably would have just checked myself in at that point. I opened the door and there was nothing there. The patient woke up and asked me what I was doing, then saw where I was looking. They said to just ignore the thing in the bathroom and it will stop. I closed the door, went back to my chair, and obviously I'm spooked, but there was nothing that I could do. I was the only one available to do the one-to-one, and that meant that I wasn't going anywhere. A little time passes, and I see the shadow again and again. This shadow proceeds to go back and forth the same way all night, dozens of times over the next few hours. I was so happy to leave when my relief came the next morning. I told a coworker who just said that it was just the light playing tricks on me or I was dozing off. Now, see, that's one of those people that would say that they were just having hallucinations. So really glad that other people were experiencing this, especially from a professional standpoint. I know that I sure as hell wasn't imagining, but I let it go. The scariest event happened to me while working there happened in that same room a few weeks later. At the time, my hair was almost to my waist. When I worked, I first put it in a ponytail and then braided it. I would then put it in a bun or just leave it in the single braid. This night I had the braid and it went about halfway down my back. I was talking to the patient safety tech, think security for the whole building kind of thing, and we were just joking around. I went off to do a round and he stayed at the desk with the nurses but was half watching me do rounds, which was pretty typical. I walked into the patient room, saw that they were asleep, and walked back out into the hallway. Halfway out the door, something grabs my braid and yanks me hard enough that I flew back about 5 feet. 5 feet, bitch! 5 feet! A whole person backwards. Now, I have always been a plus-size lady, so this had force behind. Oh my God. The problem, no one was there. There was nothing to catch my braid on and no one besides the sleeping patient in the room. When the safety tech saw me fly backwards, he booked it because he assumed I was being attacked by the patient in the room. As he gets there, I come out and put a finger to my lip for quiet and he realized that the patient is asleep. He very firmly put a hand on my shoulder and pushed me at a fast march back to the desk. I explained what happened to everyone and they were freaked out. As they should be. But also, you should be shitting your britches, bitch. What do you mean? I refused to set foot down that hallway for the last hour of the shift because I was very shaken up. Not long after, I left the hospital to become a case manager while finishing up my master. I was very glad to leave the hospital behind. Their name is at Thera, Thera _ Mama, M-A-M-A. So if anybody has any questions, I'm going to tag them and then we can ask them in the comments. That's fucking wild. Not shocked. A little bit shocked about the yanking you back so fucking far. That's crazy as fuck. But like that happening in that type of setting, I believe you wholeheartedly. Okay? Rate on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being really scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. That's fucking insane, bitch. If you have a story of your own that you want to send me, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
The snow started falling before they reached the turnoff. Thick, silent, swallowing the road as if it had never existed in the first place. This holiday was going to be the best ever. Snowfall, a cabin in the woods, wilderness surrounding them. They were going to have a good time if it killed them. Very romantic, Sally said, peering through the windscreen. If we die, I'm haunting you. Norris grinned. It'll be worth it, though. I bet the wildlife here is absolutely zippity-doo-dah. The cabin sat alone at the edge of the Cairngorms forest. Their professional-grade walking boots crunched on the snow, but then They both stopped at the same time as the trees rustled all the way from the cabin and past them, like something was running through them, away from the house. Something, or someone, thought Sally. She shook her head and smiled at Norris. Probably a ferret or something, he smiled back. Inside, the place was clean. No real personal touches, no clutter, just furniture. A fire laid but unlit and 3 heavy bolts on the door. 3 bolts? That's not very reassuring, Sally muttered. They locked up anyway and went on enjoying their evening. Sally got happily pissed and was running around the firelit room doing impressions of birds.
What am I?
Honk, honk! The first knock came.
By the way, that was a curlew I did.
Was what?
Curlew.
A curly?
Curlew.
3 taps. Slow. Polite almost. Norris paused mid-sip, knocking back his glass of ice-cold milk. You expecting someone? Sally shook her head. They waited. The knock came again, this time on the side wall of the cabin. It was like they were being circled. Sally found herself hoping it was a bear or any other type of wildlife. Just please, don't let it be a person. Norris edged towards the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. Nothing, just snow and darkness. Probably someone just lost, he said, though he didn't sound convinced. They turned off the lights and sat quietly, listening. The wind, the fire crackling, their own breathing. Then, on the back door, Sally jumped, the knocking moved. Door, wall, window. Never frantic, never angry, just like fingers running along a locked fence. A voice finally spoke from outside, calm. Is Sally home? Her stomach dropped. How could they? Open the door, Norris whispered. We can scare them off. Before she could answer, the porch light went out. Total darkness. Something scraped along the window, slowly, deliberately, and then a face appeared in the glass. Pale and featureless except for eye holes cut too large into some kind of material. Like a makeshift mask, the edges rough. A second face leaned in beside it, and then a third, shorter, head tilted at an unnatural angle. They didn't move. The figures drifted away, melting into the trees. Sally and Norris didn't sleep. They lay in bed, just listening. All night the cabin was circled, footsteps crunching in the snow, shadows passing the windows, sometimes laughter, almost playful. At dawn, Sally glanced over at Norris and saw him fast asleep. She nudged him. They padded downstairs. Norris, Sally whispered. What? He yawned. Silence. Do you think they've gone? She inched closer to the door. It was people playing with them. They were probably just drunk or high, saw that the fire was on in the cabin and thought they'd have a bit of fun. Sally's heart pounded and she screamed. In a fit of pure rage, she ran to the door and yanked it open. The snow was like powder, soft, silent and bright white. There was no one there, and more importantly, there were no footprints in the snow. Sally found something new nailed neatly to the door, a strip of paper. She ripped it off and stared at the words. Why did you come? It said. Norris came behind her, tore it away from her hands, his hand shaking. We're leaving. They packed in minutes. When Norris opened the front door, the cold rushed in. And something else. The car was gone. Not damaged, not stuck, it was just gone. Tyre tracks led away from the cabin and then stopped, abruptly as if the vehicle had simply ceased to exist. They slammed the cabin door on the outside world and the pounding started again. Norris, what did you do? He stared at her, eyes wet. What do you mean, Sally? She shook her head, a sick realisation crawling up her spine. You chose this place. You insisted. You wouldn't tell me where you found it. They could hear the banging getting louder. Sally, not now. If we don't do something, they're going to get in, and we can't let that happen. The banging stopped, but the silence was worse. Sally flew towards the bedroom door and slammed it shut, locked it, and then turned back to Norris, waiting for an explanation. Norris swallowed. Sally, I need you to listen. No, you listen, she said. Why did you bring us here? He opened his mouth, and the bedroom door creaked open. Sally's back was turned away from the door, but she saw the terror in Norris's face. She heard quiet, slow footsteps make their way into the bedroom. Then she heard the door close behind whoever it is. Sally turned slowly to face them. All lined up in height order, material covering their faces with crude drawings of eyes, nose and lips. The shortest one tilted its head and spoke. It was Sally's voice, exactly the same tone, the same cadence. Why did you come? She didn't scream this time. She grabbed Norris's hand so hard her nails broke skin. Norris shook his head. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear I thought it was just a cabin. I found it on an old forum. No address, no reviews. What have I told you about booking places without reviews?
Yeah, thank you.
Screamed Sally.
Listen to Sally.
People said it was quiet, Norris retorted helplessly. The figures shifted. Behind them, the forest pressed closer to the windows. Sally could see movement now, shapes slipping between trees, eyes catching the weak morning light. Animals stood where animals shouldn't. Deer watched without blinking, birds lining the roof ridge, all facing inward. A fox sat on its haunches like a dog, mouth split too wide and something like a grin. The tallest figure stepped forward again. You're not meant to stay. You came, watching us. The shortest one mimicked Sally's bird impression. There you go. Sally swallowed hard. We'll go, she said. We didn't mean to. Whatever this is, we'll leave it how we found it. We'll just go. The figures leaned towards one another, heads brushing. A whispering passed between them. Finally, the tallest one nodded. The bedroom door swung open behind them on its own. They all went outside. The snow had changed. It was packed now, scarred with tracks, hooves, paws. Things dragged. At the edge of the clearing, and possibly close, sat their car, frosted over, intact. They didn't run. Somehow they knew better. The figures raised their hands together and removed their masks. There were faces underneath. Human ones. Female ones. We are the women of the wildlife. You continuously bother our animals. You go everywhere. All around this country you are bothering the beavers in Trentham Gardens, Stoke-on-Trent. You are bothering the otters in Northumberland. When will it stop?
We're not bothering them! We're living in peace with them!
Sally and Norris, when will it stop? Sally and Norris ran to the car. The car doors slammed shut on their own. The engine started without the key. The moment Norris hit the accelerator, the snow seemed to melt away and the road appeared. The cabin vanished behind the trees. They didn't speak until they hit the main road. Miles later, heartbeats finally slowing. They went home. They told no one. They tried to forget. But sometimes, late at night, Sally hears birds outside the window calling her name. And every winter, when Norris and Sally's wildlife itch starts to make itself known, a single sheet of paper appears taped neatly to their front door. Stay away.
Spooky scary story time. This story was sent to me by a follower that wants to remain anonymous, and here's her story. 9 years ago, I was living with my in-laws and my mother-in-law and her double wide in a small town called Markham, Texas. She was deaf and would tell me stories about things she would see. One night, we went to her mom's house, which was my grandma-in-law's house. Mind you, I knew nothing about the land her house was built on. So one night, I went out to look at the stars, because it was a clear sky, and in her backyard was a huge tree, and to the side was a broken-down bus and a barn. Well, I kept seeing something in the dark walk back and forth near the tree, and it would go into the barn. So I went inside and let them know someone was out there. We all went to go check, and there was no one there. I stayed outside and kept seeing it, and also a shadow person in the tree. Now, my mother-in-law at the time told me she had seen little things running in the kitchen of the trailer we lived in. So one night, I stayed up with her. And she had a shoebox on the table. She was catching these little things and putting them in the shoebox. They were about 2 inches, and they looked evil. We taped up the box and wrapped it up in a plastic bag and buried it. 2 months later, we went to dig it up, and they were gone. The box was empty. The box was chewed from the inside out. Sadly, she passed a couple months later, and I still don't know what those things were. To me, they sound like duendes. But she goes on to say that I guess the land where the house was built on was a place where they kept slaves, and that tree, where she saw the shadows go back and forth, was where they would unfortunately unalive them. So I did ask her some questions, and then she went on to say that she found out months later that somebody go pray over the land, and now someone else owns it, and they have a beautiful house on it. So she thinks whatever was there eventually went away. Well, I'm glad somebody prayed over the house, and those spirits were finally able to rest. But those little things that you said on the box, they had to be duendes, and the fact that they chewed their way out, that fucking scared me when I was reading it, because I pictured these little things chewing their way out. But thank you so much for sharing that with me. And if you have a spooky, scary story you want to share, you can DM me or send it to my Gmail. And if you like this type of content, don't forget to follow.
Let's go down a very weird New Orleans rabbit hole. Growing up in New Orleans, everything is like 6 degrees of separation, baby. What if I were to tell you that those real estate signs in and around New Orleans, you know, for sale, it's not haunted, it's haunted, actually is connected to one of the biggest political scandals in the 1990s. Bon ton, let's get into it. So these for sale, haunted, not haunted signs in and around the French Quarter have been one of the weirdest curiosities in New Orleans, right? They're half joke and actually half marketing gimmick. Enter Jennifer Flowers. So Flowers became internationally known in 1992 when she claimed she had a long-term affair with Bill Clinton, which nearly derailed his presidential campaign. And overnight, she became a household name. What a lot of people don't realize is that after the scandal faded, Jennifer Flowers actually ended up in the most unlikely of places, New Orleans. Specifically the French Quarter. So at the time, she was married to Arkansas businessman and real estate broker Finnish Shellnut. After both of them moved to the French Quarter, Finnish actually invests in a lot of historical properties and in tourist-related businesses. New Orleans thrives on its haunted reputations, and I'm talking about ghost tours, voodoo legends, cemetery walks. So Venice takes notice of all this, right? And that's where the now famous signs come in. Shellnut is working in real estate in one of the most haunted, story-filled places in America. This man literally, with his team, leaned into the city's spooky reputation and created one of the best marketing hooks in real estate.
For sale, it's haunted. Boo. For sale, it's not haunted.
I mean, this is genius. In a city where people genuinely ask if the location, the house, the condo is haunted. What people really don't know is that this was a big joke. Like, to Finnish, this was a joke, right? But the joke worked perfectly. Tourists from all over the world would stand underneath these signs and take pictures and pose with them, post them on social media. So they gained a lot of momentum online. Okay, but what happened with Miss Jennifer Flowers?
Last I heard, she opened up a little piano bar, which happens to be very haunted, and she became a cabaret performer. Finnish actually passes away in 2025.
In a bizarre twist of history, and a scandal in the 90s that involved a future president, a former singer turned tabloid celebrity, and a real estate investor who intersected in one of the most haunted cities. And still today, these haunted, not haunted for sale signs still stand in and around locations in the quarter and the CBD, with one of the quirkiest reminders that even in the city, real estate comes with a ghost story. Stay haunted and weird. And laissez le bon temps rouler.
When I was 18, my mom passed away. It was very hard on the family, and I had not experienced grief or loss before, so I ended up falling into some bad habits. I dreamt about her in the first few months, where I would be having a completely different dream, and then it would shift, and she would be there, and I would hold her and tell her how I missed her. It was a comfort, and I truly believed she was coming to actually visit me. These dreams stalled for years, and if I did dream of her, it would be a normal dream where she was in the background. And eventually, I stopped having dreams with her in them all together. At one point, I'm living alone in this small apartment, and all of a sudden, I started seeing these dark shadows on the top corners of my bedroom walls. It was a regular room, my bed in the middle, door to my left. As I'm laying there, I see something dark, kind of sliding down the wall. These shadows didn't have a form, honestly looked like black vapor. I would think to myself, oh, maybe it's coming from outside. Maybe the glare from my phone, or the moon, etc. But at this point, I had been living here long enough to know that this was definitely different. At this time, I started having terrifying sleep paralysis. I would dream of those shadow vapor things coming down my wall, and feeling something on top of me that I couldn't see. And all I could do was move my eyes and try to mouth El Padre Nuestro. Eventually, I would wake up shaking and go to the living room and watch something for the rest of the night. This went on for a few weeks. I would sleep with a cross. I would pray before bed, and it kept happening. I would go maybe 2 days with peace, and then it would be back.
Oh my gosh, wait till you hear this awesome story from one of my followers. Her name is Leslie. I do want to start out by saying trigger warning on this one, okay? So around 20 years ago, her husband at the time of 10 years had been cheating on her. At first, they decided to try to stay together and work it out for them and the children, but then the physical abuse started. So as you can imagine, Leslie was a mess, and she took the kids and they up and left. She headed back to where she had lived before, where there were family and friends for support, and they just wanted to see what was next in the next chapter of life. So on one particular day, she had been hanging out with a really good friend that was very supportive and always there for her. So she had Leslie come over, and then she had suggested that maybe they should go on a hike, figuring, some fresh air could do her some good. Now, Leslie did say that she was such a hot mess, she couldn't even keep anything down. She had zero energy from losing a lot of weight and crying all the time. She even told her friend no way could she handle a hike like that, especially in this heat. But her friend hyped her up, and convinced her to go anyway. Leslie said so many times she felt like she was going to pass out, like she just could not muster the strength to make it, and she even cried on and off during this hike. But she kept going, and she said she had felt almost like a presence, almost like a physical touch on her body, keeping her up, keeping her going. So despite everything that was bringing her down and her lack of energy throughout the whole hike, she was able to push through it. So after the hike, they both end up going back to the friend's house, and Leslie goes in to take a long needed shower. She undresses, and then she happened to glance up at her reflection in the mirror, and she saw the weirdest, almost freaky thing. On her chest, collarbone, and shoulder area, she had marks that were the color of sunburn, but it wasn't sunburn, guys. It was literally handprints all over her, and they were big handprints, like not anything that she could have made by touching her own skin. She says it was almost as though someone or something was holding her up during that hike, which would explain the sensations of feeling that uplifting, almost physical touch during that hike. She says as she typed it out to me, it just gave her chills all over again. How awesome is that story? I'm sure she'll be in the comments, so let us know your thoughts. And if you have a creepy or awesome story like that of your own, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much, cause you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah? Hey, bestie boo, I missed you. What you doing? You want to go get a snack? Go get your rolling equipment? Yeah. Now, why was you already eating? A whole bunch of Big Bags. I'm telling you. So, for the sake of this story, let's call this girl Juliana. Actually, real quick before I tell the story, y'all know how I have the cleansing covered books and it is doing good? It's actually helping people. Do y'all know I have a book called The Breakup Cleanse? And that one is like $10. It's just as good as Cleansed and Covered, and I feel like you guys overlook it. So if you're going through a breakup and it's fucking you up right now, I promise you that book will help you. Anyway, back to the story. So Juliana has a gift, right? Juliana sees things that others can't. Till this day, she still has the gift. This is a story of how that gift saved her father's life. So at the time, Juliana is about 6 years old. This is when she was just like discovering that she has this gift, but at the time she didn't know it was a gift. She's thinking that everybody is able to see these things right with her. Anyway, so boom, one night she goes to sleep and she has this dream. She has this dream of this lady. Let's call the lady Kayla. She sees the lady in the dream, and for some reason she automatically just knew her name was Kayla. So boom, she sees the lady, and when she looks at the lady is standing on top of a car. And when she looks closer at the car, it's her father's car. And when she looked around, she realized she was in her house at her front door, but like by the window, so she can see Kayla standing on top of the car. And when she's standing on top of the car, she's just looking down at the car and she's like whispering. So it looks like she was praying, but that was to to Juliana. That's some weird kind of praying right there. She's praying with her eyes open, and she seems like she's praying pretty fast. And the language that she was praying in was definitely not English, but for some reason, she can understand it. Juliana can understand whatever that language that Kayla is praying in. So with understanding what Kayla is saying how she's trying to kill Juliana's dad. So something will happen with the car and the car will blow up. Now, at this point, Juliana's gift is she's so used to it at this point, she just doesn't know what it is, to the point where she knows that she's dreaming. She's very aware. She's so used to it to where she can tell herself to wake up, like she can make herself wake up. But once she heard that, she thinks, oh my God, I gotta warn my dad. And so she's like, I gotta wake up. And she makes herself wake up from the dream. And as she's about to go tell her dad, she stopped for a second. She's like, things like this happen to me all the time, and nobody really believes me when I tell them. And dad is one of those people. If I see something and I tell him I see it, he'll tell me, like, stop playing with him because there's nothing there. So he's not going to believe me, and he doesn't know that, like, how serious this is. So she's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do something better. So she goes, she gets his car keys, and she hides them. She's relieved, and she goes back to sleep. Now, it's the morning. She's getting ready for school. You know, mom is getting her ready. Dad takes her to school and then go to work. So dad is looking for the car keys. Where's the car keys? Where's the car keys? She's not saying anything until he directly asks her, hey, honey, have you seen the car keys? And so she wasn't the type of child to really lie either. Not because, like, she was scared. She just didn't, like, care to lie. So she tells her dad, yeah, I hid them. He's like, why would you hide the keys? Like, if you don't want to go to school, that's your problem. You're going to school. She's like, no, that's not why I hid them. I hid them because Kayla's trying to kill you. And when she said that, the look on his face, the look that dropped on his face, and mom caught on to that look. He looked like he's seen a ghost. Now mom is alert. She's like, who's Kayla? As Juliana is about to open her mouth to answer that question, dad overpowers her by starting to yell at her like, stop tricking us, you just don't want to go to school. Juliana's like, no, I'm not trying to trick you. Kayla put some bad prayers on the car and it's supposed to kill you. It's going to make your car blow up. So at this point, he's trying to gaslight mom and Kayla to make, not Kayla, Juliana. Basically, he's gaslighting them to make them think like, yo, she's just saying kid stuff. Like she's saying she probably had a dream last night. And little did he know she did. Now, mom is on that because mom also knows her kid. She knows her kid is not saying that for no reason, bro. So who the fuck is Kayla? At this point, they're both late. He's late to work. She's late to school. They're way late. And as they're talking and they're having this whole, you know, argument, whatever, back and forth, they hear a big ass boom. The scariest, loudest boom, as if something had blown up. So they ran outside, the parents, of course, and guess what they see? The car just blew up. Juliana followed behind them. She said, I was a kid, but I remember exactly what my parents' faces looked like. My dad looked like he's in disbelief. Like, he never thought Kayla would actually try to do that to him. But at the same time, he's having an oh shit moment. Now I can't act like Kayla don't exist no more. And mom's face had pure anger. Pure anger on her face. And later on, mom ended up telling her it's because, not because that she just basically found out that he was cheating, but because Juliana was supposed to be in that car with him. He was supposed to take her to school. So come to find out, dad was indeed cheating. And the lady he was cheating with, her name was indeed Kayla. Kayla did indeed try to put magic on the car to try and annihilate dad. Because when the car was looked at, it was technical issues. Mom did end up divorcing dad. Thank God Juliana was gifted and protected. Because if she didn't have that dream, that could have been really, really bad. If you want to know how to protect yourself, make sure you click the link in my bio and get the book Cleansed and Covered. It is a very powerful book that I made by accident. Now it's literally changing people's lives. I was just trying to teach my followers how to, it feels like I can't speak, but how to protect themselves. The physical version is coming out very, very soon. Also, yeah, the breakup cleanse. Don't sleep on that book. That one's really good too. Okay, I love you. Bye.
Let's read another scary story. Bit of backstory. At my old house when I was younger, my family and I experienced many paranormal events. One day, we contacted a psychic medium and asked her to come to the house to check it out. We didn't tell her any information about what we had experienced because we were a bit skeptical about whether her abilities were real. All she knew was that she had one spirit that sometimes made its presence known, and she was there to find out why. However, that wasn't really the case. We always believed there were multiple spirits in the house. We even had an idea of what they looked like, their general age bracket, and the kinds of things they commonly did. As she toured the house, she began describing them. She was able to tell us exactly what they looked like, and she also told us what she saw them doing. Everything she said matched the things we had already experienced. That made us feel more confident in her abilities, that we could trust what she was telling us. She then went on to explain something else. She said that me, my mom, and my older sister were like magnets, and it wasn't the house or any objects that were haunted or drawing spirits in, it was us. According to her, no matter where we moved, they would always follow us. When I was younger, maybe around 11 or 12, my nan came to stay with us over the Christmas period like she did every year. I was never extremely close with her because she lived about 13 or 14 hours south of us, so we didn't see each other very often. The way our house was designed was that the main areas, the kitchen, the dining room, and the lounge room, were all one large open space, only separated by half walls. From the lounge room, there was a long hallway that had all of our bedrooms and bathrooms branching off it. My bedroom door was directly next to the entrance to the hallway, and right across from my room was the spare room where my nan was staying. One late night, I heard mumbling coming from the lounge room that sounded like my nan, so I went to check if she was okay. When I walked up to the lounge, I saw her sitting on the couch. The couch faced away from the hallway toward the TV in the corner, so at first I could only see her from behind. When I walked around the couch, I saw her sitting there in her pajamas, and she even had her Crocs on. She was sitting completely upright in the dark, staring blankly at the TV, which was turned off. I asked her if she was okay and why she was sitting there in the dark at that hour. She didn't look at me. She didn't move at all. She just told me to go back to my room and not worry about it. I was already creeped out because it was very unlike her, but I turned around and walked back the dark hallway alone toward my room. When I got to my bedroom door, I suddenly heard snoring coming from the spare room. Confused, I opened the door, and my nan was fast asleep in her bed. I turned around to go back to my room, and in the corner of my eye, I saw who I thought was my nan still sitting in the lounge room in the exact same position. I locked myself in my room and couldn't sleep that night. Oh my gosh, that's so horrifying. What the heck? And the fact that you were able to interact with the mimic as well is so creepy. I feel like that's pretty rare, but it was just sitting there and staring at the TV, and it looked just like your nan. This is so scary, and I'm also so sorry to hear that the medium said that they're attached to you guys and not to a house or any environment. So I hope you guys are okay and are able to manage these spirits following y'all. Thank you so much for submitting this story. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. I will see you in the next one.
Have you ever got the feeling like you were being watched and there was no one there? Now, this story takes place in the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. There was this young man named Michael. Michael decided he was going to go hiking in the Appalachian Mountains. And so he gets in his car and he drives to this parking lot and he decides to hike this 6-mile loop trail. He gets on the trail and he starts to hike. He said he maybe got 3.5, 4 miles into this loop when he began to hear sounds like something was behind him. And he started to get this feeling like he was being watched, like there was someone there, but he could not see them. So he keeps on walking, and more, he just gets this feeling like he's being watched. But when he would turn his head to look over his shoulder, there would be no one there. And he would hear the sound of shuffling, of feet moving through the brush. And it would sound like it was on the right of him, and then it would sound like it was on the left. And he just kept getting this feeling like he knew that someone or something was there, but he just couldn't see it. So eventually, he gets so freaked out by this feeling of dread, like something is behind him, that he hides behind this bush. And as he sits in this bush, he begins to hear these screams. And they're getting louder and louder. They're all around him. And he can hear the movement of footsteps. But as he looks around, there is nothing there. So eventually he leaves this bush that he's hiding behind, and he takes off running onto this trail as fast as he can. And he can hear something chasing him. And as he looks back behind him, there's nothing there. Finally, he gets back to the parking lot, and there's his car. And as he makes his way towards his car, he takes one more look back. And off the trail, he sees this very large, hairy creature just staring at him, stalking him from behind a tree on this trail. So he runs to his car, he jumps in, and he gets out of there. And he said he never had that feeling of being watched ever again like he did.
Sometimes when you go out looking for haunted things, you not only find them, but you get a video of them. You want to see it? Lipstick on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time. Bright Night Files. When I tell you I sprinted to make this video, so I was scrolling my FYP as one does, and I come across this guy talking about a ghost in Ireland. Immediately, I'm set. He starts off telling about how his friend told another group of friends about this house called Carindoo. Never heard of it, but immediately I wanted to hear more because it's supposed to be like really haunted. Turns out, this place is massive and was built in like the 1800s. Started off, as they all do, this fantastic home by the sea for the wealthy. But then it all fell apart and ended up being a hospital. And then, after that, ended up being super hella haunted. Let me just show you what this house looks like real quick. They go up to the house, they go in. He said that they walked around, didn't have anything happen really, or so they thought. Then they get outside, they're walking around the grounds, and his girlfriend at the time was looking at something over to the side, and he's like paying attention to her when then something at the stables catches his eye. It's this massive like shadow figure thing. So he sees it, his friends see it, they take off running, and their girlfriends start laughing until they see two of them. Then all kinds of bad luck starts happening. One of them gets in like a car crash, and then one they thought was in a car crash. Then a lot of stuff happens. They end up going to confession to try to get rid of it. But look at this video real quick.
Go back a moment. Yeah, that is the clearest proof ever. So stop. Face, body, arm, just watching us around the door. If that's the clearest proof I've ever had of.
What is that? That is clearly some kind of Scooby-Doo type ghost thing. And I say that because, you know, on Scooby-Doo, they kind of look ghost-like. But if you will go back and watch some of my older videos, when I went to Scotland last year, I got the green lady on camera. She looks just like that. They're old, like misty looking, creepy looking ghost over there. They don't look like what we have in the US. They're completely different. Over here, they look, I don't know, more new. Over there, there's something else entirely. He ends up having this dream that he said was so real, and it had all of these demons in it that were laughing at him. And he was trying to say a prayer to get rid of them because he's Catholic, and he could not get it out. The more he tried, the more they laughed, and finally he was able to get the prayer out, and then everything went back to normal. Or so he thought. He kept having more scary things happen to him, but the cool/scary thing about it is he did about 3 or 4 videos, and then he hasn't posted since like February 13th. Where is he? What's going on? What happened since he started telling us all of these scary stories? I want to know.
Bitch, so the other day, I'm sleeping on the couch because I do this every single day because my cat is needy. And so that she doesn't bother the whole world, I'll come sleep on the couch and she'll just sleep with me, right? That particular morning, the dog came out of the room and slept on the ottoman, and we're all sleeping nice and cute in the living room. It was probably like 5 in the morning. It was like 4 something. And it started to be around 5 when we fell asleep. I'm laying there, and I always have some sort of like meditation music. Boom. I start to fall asleep, and I literally feel someone in my face, and they go like that. I open my eyes and I freak out, and I immediately am transported to the one time that I'm 11 years old. This was so crazy. I'm 11 years old, and my brother, I have 2 brothers. One of them's 8 years younger than me. The other one's a year younger than me. My brother, who is 8 years younger than me, kept trying to wake me up on a Saturday morning. Hello, leave me alone. But Saturday morning cartoons was like the thing back in the 90s, especially in the 80s. Anyway, Saturday morning, Ginger, cartoons, come, screaming, coming back and forth in the room. And I'm like, please, I want to sleep. I don't want to see no Saturday morning cartoons. But he knew that I also liked The Little Mermaid at the time. And it was one of the Little Mermaid cartoons. And he comes running in, please, The Little Mermaid's on. And I was like, oh, no. Like, I remember just throwing the blanket over my face, rolling over and telling him, close the door and put the lock on the door. So he closed the door and I look and the door's not locked, right? I took the blanket off and I look and I'm like, Giancarlo! And he comes running back. I'm like, lock the door. So he's like, oh, because he thought he was going to get away with it, closing the door only. So I'm watching him, literally watching him. And he locks the door and he closes the door all pissed off because he wants his big sister to watch Saturday morning cartoons. And I was like, no. But it's already pretty bright outside. So I had thrown the blanket right back over my head to try to fall back asleep. And I'm just laying there, and I'm thinking about how freaking annoying, because I'm the type of person, if you wake me up, that's it. It's so hard for me to go right back to sleep. And as I'm laying there and I'm about to fall asleep, right in my ear, I feel just like that. In like my left ear, it was absolutely terrifying because as soon as it happened, I threw the blanket off my face and I looked to see if maybe I'm delusional and my little brother actually did not lock the door. And I sat straight up and I looked around the room. I looked under the bed. I looked off to the side. I'm like, nah. And I opened the closet door and I'm looking around and I'm like, he's not in here. And I look at the door and I'm looking at the door and I'm like, he didn't do this. He didn't do this. Okay. All right. Saturday morning cartoons it fucking is, bitch. I'm out.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. The necklace, per usual. You know where it's at. Now on to the story. I wrote this months ago before chemo started again. I was going to tell it myself, but I'm not camera friendly. I hope treatments are going well. My story starts out 44 years ago. Mind you, I don't think all spirits are bad. I believe there are evil things in this world, but I also believe that there are spirits to protect. When I was about 4 or 5, my parents bought an old house in Massachusetts. It sat right next to a church. The second you walk inside, you felt it. Cold, heavy, like the air didn't move right. As soon as we walked in, there was a Raggedy Ann doll that stayed near the stairs. I would raggedy run the fuck out of there, because isn't the fucking Annabelle doll a Raggedy Ann doll? Hard pass. Instantly, it became mine. I carried her everywhere. My stepfather was abusive. Fuck him. Not just beatings, SA2. I'll beat his fucking ass. I don't remember anything from before we moved into that house. Nothing. At night, I would cry and hold that doll and pray. I would beg God to send my real dad to save me. Send an angel just to help me. That is so fucking sad. One night, while I was crying, I heard a whisper. My name is Gwendolyn, child. I wasn't scared. I guess I was just too young to understand fear like that because maybe I felt she wasn't bad. I don't know. After that, things started happening. Whenever I heard my stepfather's footsteps coming up the stairs to my room, my bedroom door would lock by itself. The house was so old that the locks didn't even work anymore, but you could hear it click. The radiator would start whistling, the lights would flicker, he would try the handle, and then he would walk away. That only happened when I was upstairs with that doll. Okay, so maybe we're cool with the doll. My bad. My fear prejudged, okay? Later, the lock on my door was physically altered. The metal bar inside was removed. The abuse got worse when my doll was not with me and more often. I really don't fucking like this. One day when I was about 7-ish, something new happened. The bathroom door opened on its own. When he came creeping up the stairs, he was always slow, and you could hear the stairs creaking under his feet. Inside the bathroom on the right was a small door that had never opened before. We tried everything to open it, but it was always stuck. But it cracked open for me. Inside was a small cubby hole. I dragged piles of old towels, clothes, whatever was on the floor, and I hid in there holding my doll. Once I was inside, the door would close on its own, and it wouldn't open again until he was gone and I could push it open easily. No one ever fixed it. I just can't explain it. When I was around 10, the doll disappeared. Just gone. But I was old enough I could leave, hide, or dissociate. Damn it, man. When I was 12, after another incident, I punched my bedroom wall until the drywall broke. Behind it, I found pearl earrings. Just there, not a box, but wrapped in a note. It said, "Today, I give myself to God. May God hold me close. My soul I give to him, Gwen." I hadn't thought about that whisper in years. That voice that so clearly said my name is Gwendolyn, child, but in that moment, I knew she was my protector. Around that same time, my best friend was sleeping over. There was a huge storm. We were idiots playing with the Ouija board. You know what? I'm gonna let this one go. Suddenly, the bathroom door slammed open and closed, and then it slammed open again into the small cubby hole door that only opened for me. We ran across the room, away from the bathroom, towards the corner of my bedroom. Yeah, that scared the hell out of us. And then, boom, my window shattered. Our neighbor's house exploded. We sat in the corner in shock. My mom came from her bedroom, grabbed us, and went outside. Later, we had found out that he had built a small bomb and taken his own life because his wife took his kids and left him. A fucking bomb? When we went back days later, my friend refused to go inside. She said, "Didn't you see the shadow person in the doorway?" I hadn't, but she swore that she did. I mean, a shadow person on top of the door opening and slamming shut and opening again. Hell no. I'm not going back either. A few months later, my stepfather come into my room again. The lights flickered, my violin fell. He started saying things about how grown and beautiful I was, etc. This makes me incredibly angry. I picked up that violin and I hit him so many times that I can't count. The bathroom door slammed open and I saw something black. Not smoke, not shadow, just dark outline. I guess that's the best way to describe her. It moved from the bathroom toward my room. And I heard, as clear as anything, breathy words, "Run now." And I did. I heard my door slam behind me. I ran to the corner store and told them to call the police. He was arrested. I was placed into foster care. A few years later, I searched out information about the house, and it used to be a nunnery. A man had unalived a nun who had lived there. At the librarian knew about the whole story and my house. She said that no one would buy that house. My stepfather got it cheap because it was haunted. So she helped me. I found old archived newspapers in the obituary. Her birth name was Gwendolyn Peters. She lost her life heroically saving others. My shock when I read that she locked him in a closet to save their lives. This one's a little bit emotional, I'm not gonna lie. The librarian told me that they hadn't found the man who did this. I don't know what people believe. I just know when I was a little girl praying for someone to save me, a hero answered. Damn! That's sad as fuck. That is sad as fuck. I am so sorry that you went through all that shit. I don't even know what to say. I really don't even know what to say. Gwen is a real one. Gwen is a fucking real one. Oh my god, I don't even know how to rate it. What do we do? I don't know. Just put Gwen as that girl in the comments and then offer words of encouragement, especially because it says that they are going through chemo, which is just makes this story even more sad. I don't know what else to say. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I'll see you all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
There was this man named Jonathan. Now, Jonathan said when he was younger, he would go and visit his grandfather who lived in Louisiana on the bayou. Now, his grandfather had lived his whole life right on this sort of waterway that was known to be haunted. Now, he said this particular summer, he went to his grandfather's house and he was going to stay for a week. So he gets to his grandfather's house and his grandfather greets him and is so excited. And he's like, "Welcome, Jonathan, come on in and let me get you something to eat." Well, the first thing he noticed when he goes into his grandfather's house is there is this stench of something that is rotting. So he says, "Grandfather, like, what is that smell? Like, why does it smell like, something is rotting?" And his grandfather says, "Oh, it's nothing, don't worry." So he thinks, "Oh, that was kind of odd." He also noticed one of the rooms in the house was like boarded up. And he said, "Grandfather, why do you have that door closed?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm doing some repairs in that room. I just didn't want you to go in there and get hurt." So they start, talking, having a good time. And then nightfall came. And Jonathan said as soon as it got dark, his grandfather started getting really anxious and antsy. And his grandfather told him, "I want you to go in your bedroom and you lock the door and go to bed." And he's like, "But grandfather, I thought we could stay up late and, tell stories and stuff." And his grandfather's like, "No, go into your bedroom and lock the door." So he goes into the bedroom and he notices that his grandfather has put, this deadbolt lock on the door. So he locks the door and he lays down. Later that night, he hears kind of like a very loud ruckus coming from outside the room. And then he hears the front door open. And after that, everything was quiet. He goes to bed. The next morning, his grandfather comes inside the door and he's like, "Grandfather, where were you last night?" And he said, "Oh, nowhere. It's okay. Everything's all right. Like, don't worry." And he said, "Well, why were you so nervous last night and made me lock my door?" And his grandfather said, "Oh, just precautionary." So he said, like, every night he was there at his grandfather's, like, his grandfather would leave in the middle of the night and then come back in the morning. Well, the last day he is there, he goes into the bedroom, locks the door for the night, and he starts hearing that sound, like a ruckus sound coming from outside the room. This time, however, he unlocks his door, he goes out of the room. And over in the kitchen, like, he can see someone moving around kind of like really violently, and he hears all of these weird kind of gurgling sounds. And when he gets a better look at what is in this kitchen, he said it was this, muscular middle-aged man, but he had the face of what looked like a wolf. And he said this thing just noticed him, and it started growling at him and snarling. It walks towards him and then grabs him by the arm. And the only thing Jonathan could think of at the time was to bite the arm of whatever this was. So he bites the arm of whatever this was, and he runs into his bedroom and he locks the door. The next morning, he hears the front door open and he thinks, "Oh, my grandfather's home." He opens the door and he sees his grandfather coming inside. He is like completely disheveled. He's not wearing a shirt. And he notices he has this bandage wrapped around his arm in the same exact spot of where he had bit that thing that he encountered the night before. So he knew at that moment that what he seen was his grandfather. And he said he believes to this day that he's seen what is known as the ruggaroo.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
There's a Walmart in Galveston, Texas. It's probably the most haunted place in America. And most people don't even know that it's there. Now, you have to understand the history of Galveston, Texas. In the 1900s, there was a giant hurricane that basically put the whole city underwater. And you had over 6,000 people who passed away. Now, where this Walmart is built, during that time of the hurricane, there was an orphanage. And when the hurricane hit, it completely put the orphanage underwater. 100 people at that orphanage passed away, 90 children and 10 nuns. And it's said that the spirit of those children still haunt that Walmart to this day. Now, if you go to this Walmart, you'll notice that it's kind of eerie. And they close at 10 p.m. The people that work there do not like to stay late because a lot of weird things happen, such as toys turning on by themselves, hearing children's laughter, seeing children running through the aisles. Now, there was a story from one of the workers who worked the night shift. They were restocking the children's area where the toys are located. And as this worker goes over to their pallet, they begin to hear children laughing and they hear all these toys turning on. So they go over to this aisle and they see about 6 or 7 children playing with all the toys. And they're dressed in 1900s looking clothing. And so this employee runs and gets the GM and tells him, like, hey, there's something weird happening in the toy aisle. So the GM follows this employee to the aisle. And when they get there, there's no children. But there are all these toys laid out on the floor as if someone was playing with them. So what do you think? Is the Walmart in Galveston haunted?
Weird spooky story time. And have you ever had something speak to you when you were completely alone? Because it happened to me at the Gilroy outlets. Back in the late 2000s, I lived in Gilroy and I was working at the Gilroy Premium Outlets. I was working on the side where the In-N-Out Burger is. I was head cashier at a store that was called Vanity Fair. It's now where Saks Fifth Avenue is at. One morning, my daughter's dad, back when we were just still dating, dropped me off at work. I was opening the store. The outlets were not open yet. The doors were locked. There was no one around. I was getting everything ready at the front registers and my back was to the big windows that you see at the outlets. The only way anyone could have came from behind me is they would have had to come from my left around the register. And it was easy for me to see in my peripheral vision if somebody had come through there anyway. Nothing had moved. No one was there. Then right behind me, right next to my ear, a voice right here. It didn't even whisper. It just said, "Hey." I was freaked. Like, it was a full-on human voice. I spun around. My heart was beating so fast. I thought maybe my daughter's dad had snuck in for like a split second. I thought maybe he was like trying to scare me. But then I was like, there is no way he could get inside of this store, let alone sneak up from my left. So as I'm spinning around, I'm like, wait a minute. And I felt like the vibration of the voice right here. I was like spinning around trying to make sense of it. And then of course I'm like texting him, telling him what happened, how I thought it was him. He does not believe in those kind of things, so he just kind of laughed it off and was like, oh, that's crazy. He definitely did not believe me. So when I got the story about the Gilroy outlets, it reminded me of this. Sometimes I wish that I had asked like my boss to like pull the footage from that moment and see if you could see anything, but I was way too embarrassed. I was afraid that I would just look hella stupid and they would just like make fun of me or tell me I'm being ridiculous. So that's my Gilroy outlets spooky story. And I could see in the comments that a bunch of you have had experiences. I would love to read them so that way we're not all feeling alone in this, because we're not crazy. In honor of Women's History Month, I'm doing 31 Days of Women in Horror. You know her as powerful, untouchable, and iconic. So let's get into Angela Bassett's horror resume. Because Angela Bassett doesn't just enter horror, she commands it. Before the awards, she stepped into space horror, a low-budget, creepy sci-fi sequel. 1992's Critters 4. 1995, she played in Strange Days. Now, this is not your traditional horror, but it was dark, dystopian, and deeply unsettling. The film dives into recorded memories, obsession, and violence. Angela plays Mace. Strong, grounded, and fearless in a world that's unraveling. Then in 2000, she played in Supernova, another brush with space horror. Apparently, Angela Bassett versus the unknown has become a theme. Then in 2011 to 2024, she played an American Horror Story, and this is where she reigns. In Coven, she plays Marie Laveau, a voodoo queen. Powerful, stylish, and absolutely terrifying when crossed. Freak Show, she returns darker and sharper, playing Desiree Dupree, still carrying that mystical edge. In Freak Show, she returns as Ramona Royale. Seductive, deadly, and completely unforgettable. She came back to American Horror Story in 2016 in Roanoke. 2024, she played in Damsel, stepping into dark fantasy territory, proving she can exist in an eerie world, whether it's witches, monsters, or something far worse. What makes Angela Bassett different is she never plays victim. She becomes women who face the darkness and become it if they have to. So next time you think of horror legends, don't forget the woman who walked into the shadows and made them bow. Come back tomorrow for my 31 Days of Women in Horror for Women's History Month.
And this is the reason why you should never ever give a beggar your money. I did, and this happened to me. Story time. One day after work, I was walking back home. It was a little bit dark, not too late. And on the street, I noticed this really frail, old-looking woman. Never seen her before. She was sat on the curb and she was begging. As I approached her, she reached out to me and she grabbed my leg and she shouted, "My daughter, please, I need some money to buy food." I heard a voice in my head telling me not to give her any money. I didn't have any food with me, so I hesitated, but then I get in my purse and I give her some money. She thanked me, but before she did, she grabbed me, pulled me closer to her, and she whispered something very, very chilling, something I didn't expect from her. She said, "Now you have given me access to you, so you must respond when I call you." I thought this woman, this beggar, maybe she's not right up there, so I didn't pay too much attention. But what she said, it made me like unsettled. Anyway, I left. But then, as I walked a bit, I turned around. But tell me why I could not see this woman who was sat on the curb. But then I saw a really, really dark cat with glowy eyes. I thought, what is going on? Because it was as if this woman had disappeared into thin air. Anyway, I carried on walking, and as I was approaching home, I noticed exact same black cat with these glowy eyes following me. This freaked me out. I went in and I didn't say anything, didn't think much about it. But then, as I was in the kitchen preparing food, I could see that same cat standing outside staring at me. Now, I was thinking, what is going on with this cat? First time ever seeing a cat follow me or stand and stare like that, as if it was seeing something like a ghost. Anyway, I didn't pay mind to it. I went to bed. But that particular night, I started having really weird dreams that did not make sense. I couldn't understand what exactly was going on. In the dream, I could see this cat again staring at me, but only this time it called my name. I freaked out. Next thing, it lashes out and it started scratching me. When I woke up, I was covered in scratches. I kid you not. I was freaked out. I didn't know what exactly was going on. Anyway, I went to work, doing my usual thing, and I didn't pay mind to it. But tell me why The next day, after work, when I walked past, I could see that same cat on the exact same spot as that woman who begged me for money. I didn't pay mind to it. This time I walked past really fast, not even looking at it. I get home, everything is fine, I go to bed. Then I'm woken up by something calling my name. And then it said something very chilling and familiar, that you gave me permission and you must answer whenever I call your name. When I woke up, the place was very, very chilling, darker than usual. When I turn around to look at the door, I see a shadow at my door. I did not know what was going on.
This story is a cautionary tale as to why you should never do brujeria to try to get a person to fall in love with you. Not only because it's just like morally wrong, you're messing with free will, you also have no idea what may be protecting that person, and it can backfire horribly. For the sake of the story, let's call her Lucy. Lucy had a boyfriend that she was trying to get to come back to her. Out of curiosity, she decided to Google up some spells that would potentially make him like want to get back together. Before bed, she did the whole spell. She did her little altar. She set everything up. She noticed that the minute she did this spell in order to try to get him to come back to her, her hands started to burn. She didn't really think much of it. She decided to kind of just shrug it off, finish up the spell, and go to bed. Not long after she went to bed, her fire alarm starts going off. She goes and checks, and the little altar that she had set up had literally caught on fire, inches away from having the rest of her house catch on fire. She ended up going to a witch to try to find out what happened to the spell, and the witch confirmed that the spell had backfired because the person she did it on was protected. So unless you know what you're doing, don't mess around with witchcraft. Even if you know what you're doing, like, I feel like you probably shouldn't mess around with that, period. Unless it's to protect yourself, then it's fair game.
Get ready with me while I tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories or paranormal experiences that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I was 12 when it happened. And for a little background, my uncle struggled with addiction for a long time, so my parents didn't really want me around him. But honestly, he was like my best friend. No matter what, I would always find a way to see him or talk to him, even without them knowing. We had a Snapchat streak, so we talked literally every day. On the day that he passed, it was summer, and I was babysitting my younger siblings at my dad's house. I had been snapping him throughout the day like usual, and everything seemed normal until around 6:30 p.m. That's when he suddenly stopped replying. That was weird because he always answered me pretty fast, and I remember checking my phone a few times and thinking it was off, but I didn't think too much of it at the time. Later that night, after the kids went to sleep, my dad and stepmom left the house for a bit. A really bad thunderstorm rolled in, and I already hate thunder, so I was on edge the whole time. Around 1 a.m., they came back, and I remember telling my dad how my uncle hadn't answered me all night. Instead of responding normally, he just started talking about how much my uncle loved me. It felt kind of random, and I honestly just thought that he had been drinking. The next morning, around 9 a.m., my stepmom woke me up and told me my mom was on her way to pick me up. That wasn't normal at all because I always sleep in late, so I already had a weird feeling. I got ready really quickly and went outside to wait for her. Usually when she picks me up, I joke around and make faces at her through the car window, but this time she wouldn't even look at me. When I got in the car, I saw that she was crying. I kept asking her what was wrong over and over again, and that's when she told me my uncle had passed away. I don't even know how to explain that feeling. It honestly felt like my heart just dropped out of my chest. A few days later, we were at my grandparents' house, which is also where my uncle had lived. My mom, my aunts, and my grandma were all sitting at the dining room table, talking about funeral arrangements and going through old pictures of him. I wasn't really paying attention to what they were doing. I was just sitting there scrolling on my phone because I didn't want to hear it. I had just lost my best friend, and it just didn't feel real. At one point, I went to put my phone down and actually listen to what they were saying. From where I was sitting, you could see the door that leads downstairs, and that's where his room was. That's where he had passed away. The door was cracked open, which I immediately thought was strange because it's usually kept shut. I remember just staring at it for a second, kind of uneasy, but I didn't say anything. The house already felt off, like really quiet in a way that just didn't feel normal. Right as I looked back down at my phone, I get a notification. It was from Snapchat. From him. Stop. I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. My first thought was that it had to be a glitch or something delayed, but it didn't feel like that. It showed that he had sent me something. My hand started shaking when I opened it. It wasn't anything clear, just a really dark image. But it didn't look random. It looked like it had been taken in a dim room. And for some reason, my mind immediately went to the basement. I don't like this. I remember my stomach sinking, like that heavy, sick feeling you get when something isn't right. I looked up again toward the basement door, and it was still slightly open. I didn't know what to think, so I just sat there, frozen, staring between my phone and that door. Then I got another notification. This time it was a message from him. What is happening? Definitely isn't the first time I've heard of something like this happening. There are a bunch of stories out there of people who have just recently passed away, either making phone calls but you can't really hear, or leaving voicemails, but again, nothing is clear. I've told one before here as well of a man whose wife had passed away, and then they ended up calling him. At that point, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I didn't even want to open it, but I did anyway. And all it said was something along the lines of him asking why I hadn't answered. That's what really got to me, because I had been talking to him all day, up until he stopped replying. It didn't make sense. Nothing about it made sense. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just sat there staring at the screen, feeling completely freaked out and confused. After that, there were no more messages. Nothing else came through, but I still think about it all the time, because I don't know if it was just a glitch or something else. And the part that really sticks with me is the timing. The fact that he stopped replying right around when everything happened. And then somehow, days later, I get something from him again, and I still can't explain it.
In 2012, an aura of a event actually attacked Haiti. It was an earthquake, 7.0 magnitude, that actually left the whole place, the whole country, including Dominican Republic, but not so heavily, completely shook. Over 350,000 people were actually unalive. And the saddest story about this whole thing, and I know, rest in peace to everyone who actually passed away from this crazy event. And I remember it like it was yesterday, because my dad was actually down there. My dad was this close to be a victim as well. Fortunately for him, 5 to 10 seconds after he left the building that he was at, which was his business that he was running, he left the place. 10 seconds after, he felt his car shaking like it was being thrown around. And then it was an earthquake. It took the lives of 350,000 people. But my main focus here is the 50,000s of kids that actually went completely missing. When I meant missing, vanish in plain sight. And there were many, many articles written by these children. Had it had been TikTok back then, the way TikTok is right now, there is no way these kids would have been completely vanished without a trail. Because a lot of us would have had that voice, the platform, to be asking questions and actually getting answers into what the heck happened to these kids. Roughly 50,000 kids were actually just, without parents, no family members. They were just on the streets. Fortunately for him, in the beginning, like a week after the earthquake, authorities in Haiti were able to actually wrap up these kids and actually put them in places where they would be taken care of. They would be clothed, fed, they'll be in good hands, allegedly. And there were news that some of these kids were going to be adopted by parents from here in the United States, the parents from France. They were actually into adopting some of these kids to a place for adoption. Okay, but there was no report of no adoption. I'm talking about a mass report of kids. They actually ended up in great hands in different countries. Countries who were actually trying to help after the earthquake happened. But like there were a lot of reports, especially supernatural stuff that happened in Haiti that could literally easily be the reason why these kids were actually, like they actually vanished in the face of the earth. My dad especially, after the earthquake, there was no traveling, like even communication was rough. Everything was rough. Everyone was sleeping in tents in the streets of Haiti. It was just like, it was just an image that you had to be there in order for you to see exactly how bad, how much of like hell-like Haiti was around that moment. My dad described his every single night like he was fighting demons, like he was fighting like the devil himself. At night, able to sleep, he would like smoke cigarette. This is a dude who never smoked once in his life. He would drink to himself to sleep. From the things that he was hearing and from the things that he was seeing happening to these bodies that was actually laying on the streets of Haiti. And he actually described a few of these details that were happening, like demonic stuff coming down from the sky and feasting on these like bodies, like of the people who actually passed away from the earthquake. The authorities could not actually grab them, like in mass and literally dump the bodies someplace where they'll be in pile. Enough time for them to actually clean the streets of Haiti. So like if you were alive, you're sleeping in tents, you're right next to an alive body. So he was saying that sometimes at night, like when these beings come down and then like he would watch the whole thing happen and unfolding. Maybe these kids were actually part of, like the victims, in the aftermath of the earthquake. That is something, some type of stories that like mostly of the country was actually talking about, like what happened to these kids. But then on the other end, there were other people who actually speculating that like the people who were supposed to be taking care of these kids, they actually trafficked these kids. These kids were part of a mass trafficking throughout, like I'm talking about like from Haiti to the United States to other countries in different parts of the world or something. We don't know. I took everything that I heard, stories from my dad, stories from cousins, stories from my uncle, stories from people like from politics in Haiti, politics in the United States. But then afterwards, like everything just like completely shut. You didn't hear anything about these roughly over 50,000 kids just completely vanish. Vanish. And we don't have an answer for any of that. Had it had been TikTok back then, these people wouldn't be able to get away, or these beings that my dad mentioned wouldn't be able to get away with stuff like that. But unfortunately, Haiti is a very vulnerable place, especially when natural disaster like that happens. Like the people actually continue to suffer. The kids continue to suffer. And we suffer from other beings from out of this world. We suffer from politics, from our own authorities who are supposed to be looking after us, from authorities from this country as well, who's supposed to be a helping hands, from other countries who pretend to be a helping hands. And then they end up either getting our resources when we need help, or our children are the ones getting shipped, to God knows where, and we always end up being the victims. But guess what? We have a voice now. We have a voice. If you me right now and you're still concerned about these 50,000, roughly over 50,000 kids who actually went missing during the earthquake, you have a voice now. You can either share this video, leave your concern in the comment, or you can simply do your own research or stitch or duet this video. Just you reach one person, 2 people, 3 people, maybe some answers could actually come along.
Hey, yeah, I'm so sorry that I have not been posting, but I'm about to be back on the road, so make sure you guys are following me so that you can see my new spooky scary story times that I'm about to come out with. This was 2 years ago. This was probably like 2024 of July, because we go camping in the summertime every single year. And this year, it was kind of a lot of us. It was me and my cousins from both sides of the family. And the specific cousins that I'm about to be talking about are my cousins from the like Appalachian Mountains area, Bennington, Vermont, like that type of area. And they brought their peoples, right? It was 2 girls and 1 boy. One boy and 1 girl was like the boyfriend and girlfriend. They had like a little relationship shit going on. And the other girl was just like a friend that she brought. So I want to mention that the specific friend, not the one that was in a relationship, the female, she was into like crystals, witchcraft, Ouija boards, you know, spells, spell books. She was into that type of stuff. So the whole entire camp trip that we was out there, every time I would see her, she would be doing something new. She would be doing something with the crystals. She would be reading her spell book. But this specific night, right, this was like right before we were gonna leave the camp, like 2 days before. It was her and the girlfriend of my cousin. Let me mention also, this specific night, it was a full moon, like a big full moon. And we're like, the campsite we were at, they had like a little beach there. So like, you know, picture the beach with the full moon. And we always see animals. We see like deers and chipmunks, but this specific night we were seeing owls. You know, owls are really spiritual. Me and a couple of the members from like my campsite, we were walking up to the beach. And at the beach, there's like this little bench with a light on it right before you could get on the sand. And it was her and the girlfriend sitting playing the Ouija board. But once they peeped us playing, like us walking, she and the girlfriend looked at us and just put it away. I didn't see them say goodbye. I didn't see them say like, can we leave? They just put it away and put it in a bag. But right after that, oh my god, this is on 10%. Let me hurry up. But while they were playing the Ouija board, there were like a whole swarm of beetles by them, like flying around them. And usually like everybody else be hitting the beetles like to get it out their face. No, they were just sitting there playing the Ouija board, not caring that the beetles is landing on them, in their face, all that. But so then after that, I see they have their bathing suits on, and they go walking into the water holding hands, but they're walking slowly. Then they look at each other and start holding each other hands. Mind you, they're under a full moon. And they're whispering, but we was like past the sand and we can hear them. Like the whispers was loud, like if it wasn't only 2 people whispering. They were like chanting something. They kept saying something over and over and over and over again in the water. Mind you, you can't see your feet in the water. You can't see nothing. And I'm like sitting and I'm like, how is y'all not scared to be in that water? It's lake water. You can't see shit. And it's dark. It's a full moon. Y'all chanting shit. Y'all was just playing with the Ouija board. You know we seeing animals that we ain't see. Like, it was weird. After that, once I peeped that, I told all the youngest that was with me, we going back to the campsite. We not about to deal with that. So we went back to the campsite. We was all talking about it. And it's crazy, though, because my cousin is not into that type of stuff. From what she tells me and my family, she's not into that type of stuff. But just knowing that those type of people do stuff like that and they're constantly around her, it's just like, I don't know. Make sure y'all follow me. I'm gonna be posting a lot more scary story time. And I did not forget about the 10 people that commented on my video and followed me for the giveaway. I'm gonna show you the stuff for the giveaway. It's been so much going on lately that I've been trying to just squeeze in content for y'all. I'm going to make a video about the gifts that I'm going to give out. Hey y'all, it's your girl Jayla Gambino, back with another spooky scary story time. This is about astral projection. I just want to say this is for entertainment purposes only. This is all allegedly. But, you know, we're talking about astral projection here. This girl mentions that she's been astral projecting since she was a baby, like as long as she can remember. She would just see herself, you know, floating on top of her bed, looking down at herself or on the side of her, like not going too far. Up until 2 years ago, she decided that she wanted to go far. She was progressively working each time she was astral projecting on going farther and farther. So she mentions that when she was trying to astral project, she wanted to go somewhere far, like to another state or whatever, she said. The thing about it was she was trying to have her friend come with her. So I don't know if her friend was aware of astral projection, but she was basically saying like, yeah, we could do this and that and third. We gonna go here. And yeah, she was getting hype about it. She mentions that like she is not a professional at this. She was still experimenting. And she said that for some reason she felt like her and the friend were trying to spy on somebody. I don't know what she meant by that. She went like far. Like she seen herself going really, really far. And in the midst of her going far, this lady just pops out of nowhere. And like she pops out of colors, but they're colors that like the average human would not know exist. Like colors that you never seen before. And I have another story time about that. Like I actually had my own personal dream about colors I never seen before. Anyways, when the lady came out of the colors, she told her like, you're not supposed to be doing this right now. Like you gotta stop. And she said ever since that astral projection experience, she has never astral projected again. Mind you, this was 2 years ago.